All right. Welcome to the GX community. This is GXBOB, and I just wanted to introduce to you guys my little friend. This is what they call the moneymaker on the streets. Your catalytic converter's best friend, or your worst enemy, right? So I just wanted to start by saying it's been a super long path on trying to figure out how to deter the theft of a catalytic converter on the GX460, especially when thieves go after vehicles like ours that have plenty of space to crawl underneath. Our SUV is a hot target because thieves don't have to lug around a heavy floor jack. The main objective is to go in and out in as little time as possible. So I've looked at other people's ideas, I've looked at other people's concepts. And the main one was fabricating a cover plate. The idea works to slow down the thief, but it's expensive, and I know many of us don't have hundreds of dollars to have a plate made and installed. And another thing is, how many videos are out there that will teach the common soccer mom on how to fab a plate and install it herself, right? So I got to work. The mod had to be cheap, so every single GX owner can buy one. The mod had to be easy to do, so every single GX owner with half a brain can accomplish. I looked into alarm systems for convertible vehicles and found out that they worked excellent. Until my vehicle kept going off every single night, then I realized not only does a proximity sensor work to detect movement around your vehicle, it can't distinguish between a thief and a cat. So I ripped out the proximity sensor, and that YouTube video that was supposed to be uploaded weeks ago went into the editing mode and went straight to the trash bin. So then one day I took my Sawzall and went underneath my vehicle to mimic the theft of a catalytic converter. I laid underneath there for the longest time just looking at it and going through the mindset of a thief. Did you know that the Sawzall, when cutting metal, creates vibrations throughout the entire vehicle? It's creating massive vibrations while I'm holding it when I'm pushing this trigger button. Imagine this thing on metal on your vehicle. All the metal on your vehicle's structure is all connected together. If you create vibrations in the front, you're going to totally feel it all the way in the back. So light bulbs went off in my head, introducing the Directed Electronics 504D shock sensor. It's made to be used with a Viper alarm system. But how are we going to install the shock sensor into our vehicle without having to drop hundreds of dollars on an aftermarket system? Easy. With the help of a BOSCH relay, we're going to hook up our wires and make it work on a Lexus OEM system. Total cost between $20 and $30. Okay? We are also going to use a bunch of stuff you already have in your garage. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you exactly what you need. If you want to know where I got all my stuff, I am going to provide you a link. All you have to do is just click on the title. There's going to be a drop down, and it's going to provide you all the links for the BOSCH relay with the socket. It's going to provide you the link to the shock sensor. Okay, but everything else is pretty much basic electric tools and hardware. That's all it is. Okay, so let's get started, guys. Your main component, you're going to need a D.E.I 504D shock sensor. Now, let me show you exactly what it looks like. Tiny shock sensor right here. Very, very, very powerful. And on the side of the shock sensor has this orange knob. You turn it clockwise to make it more sensitive. You turn it left for less sensitive. Okay? We are going to test this out. We're going to turn it all the way to maximum and then go from there. With it comes with its wire harness. Let's go and take a look at this. Here's the wire harness. We're going to take one end of the wire harness and we're going to plug it in to our shock sensor. It only goes in one way, guys. See those two notches and see these two notches? Let's go ahead and plug it in. Okay, after we plug it in, we are going to set it aside. We're not going to do anything to it yet. Next, we have the 5-pin BOSCH style relay. Okay, it's going to look like this. We're going to buy the socket and we're going to plug it in. The only reason why I bought the socket, because it makes life a lot easier than using a bunch of female connectors to plug it into the relay. So we are going to use this, and it provides us wire extensions for us to use. Okay, so when you guys end up going off and buying your own relay or relay socket, and you're not going to use my link, make sure the wiring color is the same. Okay, here is the bracket down here for the relay. The top one is going to be yellow, black on the side, white on the side. The middle one is red, and the bottom one is blue. Okay, it's going to look just like that. There's going to be many sockets out there, but the link I'm going to provide you guys are going to have the same pattern like this. And the reason why this is important, because when I go through my instructions, I am going to refer them by color. Okay, so if you get another type of socket and the colors are not the same format as mine, you're going to start frying up your car. Okay, we don't want that. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this aside. Next, we are going to need two 5-amp fuses. Okay, you can make your life a lot easier buying a couple of add-on fuse, but I didn't. All I had was two fuses just lying around, so I'm going to use these. Next, you are going to need about 5 female connectors, 5 of them. Next, you're going to need about 3 male connectors. Set these aside. You're going to need 1 4 connector. This is to tie to a ground somewhere on our vehicle. We just loosen up a bolt or a nut on the vehicle, and we just slip this in, and then we tighten it, and this holds our ground. Okay, so 1 4 connector. We are going to need 3 T-taps. These T-taps are awesome because when you clamp onto a wire, when you put a wire here and you just clamp onto it, you close this up, you get your male connector and you plug it in here. Now you got this wire connected to this wire. You have 2 wires connected to each other. Okay, so 2 yellow ones because we are going to clamp onto 2 thick gauge wires, and 1 red one because we are going to clamp on 1 18 gauge wire, a smaller wire. Okay, so let's set that aside. What tools are we going to need? Obviously, for every electrical job, we're going to need wire strippers, and we're going to need crimpers. Crimpers are used to smash on these connectors, smash them down on wires so the wires stay with the connector. So you need these crimpers. Okay, set those aside. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. This is to take down panels in our vehicle. We are only going to be working in the driver's cockpit. Okay. Next, you're going to need a 10mm socket and ratchet, again, to take down panels in our driver's cockpit. We are going to need a small pair of pliers. This comes in handy because this is used to clamp down on the T-tap on a wire. This is what I use. Sometimes I can't do it by hand because it's just the wire's too thick or whatever. This is used to clamp down and it locks it into place. Okay, so small pair of pliers. Next, my favorite panel tools. One small and one wide. Okay, you're going to need these panel tools. We're going to be taking off panels. Next, black 3M electrical tape. This is whenever we make a connection on wires, we like to tape them up so they don't come loose on our connectors. Let's say this is connected to a red wire. We're going to 3M tape it together so it stays together for the longevity of the installation. Okay. Okay, next and last, we are going to need a bag of zip ties. Zip ties, plenty of zip ties if you want a clean installation. Okay, you guys know what zip ties are. They go through the slot, you pull on them, and it just tightens on your wire bundles and it keeps everything clean. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and take everything to our driver's cockpit. Let's go. Let's grab our plastic trim tool right here. We're going to stick it between the center console and our side panel right here. Stick it right through there, and we're going to pop this out. Use your fingers and hands to start popping it out and just start removing this whole entire panel on the side right here. Now we're going to take this and we're going to set it aside. Let's put it on our passenger seat. Next, we're going to take our wide panel tool. We're going to stick it underneath our side steps right here between the carpet and the plastic, and we're just going to pry up. Should pop off pretty easily. We're going to set this underneath our vehicle. Now let's go inside of our vehicle. On our left kick panel right here, there's going to be a round black knob right there. You're going to use your fingers, it's plastic, and you're going to turn it counterclockwise until it comes out. It's going to look like this. Let's set it aside. I like to keep everything in the corner right here. Next, we are going to take our hands and we are going to take our kick panel, we're going to pull it towards us. Grab from the back and pull towards us. The whole thing should slide right out. We're going to put it underneath our vehicle. Next, we're going to take out this Phillips screw directly underneath our steering wheel. One Phillips screw. Let's go ahead and put it in the corner. We're going to take this black panel and we're going to pull on it until it drops. Let's take it out of the vehicle. And let's put it underneath our vehicle so it's out of the way. Next, right here, right above our kick panel that we removed, we are going to take off a 10 millimeter. Now we're going to go across to our right knee, and there is going to be a little hidden panel right here. We're going to take our panel tool and slip it in the slot above here, and we're going to pry it open. Once it opens, there's going to be a 10 millimeter that we're going to need to remove. Go ahead and set it aside. Next, we are going to pry this open. Take our plastic panel tool, we're going to stick it right in here, and we're going to pry. Pops right out. Push on the tabs to remove each plug. Let's take this and set it aside. Now we're going to want to remove this panel. Fairly simple. Just go ahead and put your trim panel in here and just pry on it, and it should pop right out. Same thing with this side. Put your fingers between the steering column and the plastic panel and just pull out. It's all plastic clips from here. Once you remove it, you're going to go behind this console and remove these plugs, just so this panel would drop onto the floor. Once this drops on the floor, you're going to remove your hood release. Removing your hood release is not that difficult to do. There's a tab right here. You're going to take your plastic panel tool and you're going to push on that tab. When you push on that tab, you're going to push toward, you're going to push down, and you're going to use your left hand and push this towards the engine. Once you push it towards the engine, in order to get this out, you're going to have to open this up all the way and just slide it through the slot. Now let's go ahead and take this panel and let's put it to the side. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my back seat. Next, you got a 10 millimeter bolt right here. We're going to remove. Next, we're going to have a 10 millimeter right here we need to remove. Now if you follow this metal panel to your right knee, you have another 10 millimeter up here and another 10 millimeter down here that you need to remove. Now that your knee support is loose, you want to dislodge it off the frame of the vehicle and drop it. At this point right here, we are not going to detach the airbag unit. We're going to let it hang. We're going to use our brake pedal for the support, and on this other side we're going to use a tie wrap, zip tie, and support this other side. This whole entire thing is being supported by the brake pedal on the other end, and over here I'm using a zip tie to hold up this end. This is to keep it out of the way while we do our work. Let's go ahead and go back to our workstation. We're going to grab the shock sensor. We're going to take the other end of this plug right here and we're going to cut it off. We're no longer going to need it. We're going to take the light green and the blue wire and we are going to connect them together. Take our wire stripper. We're going to take about 3/4 of an inch off the shielding to expose the wire. We're going to tie them together by twirling them. After we twirl them, I'm going to grab a male connector and I'm going to crimp it. I'm going to crimp it a second time. I'm going to do the pull test to make sure it doesn't come out. Looks good. At this point, I am going to use some 3M electrical tape. And I'm going to tape up the connector with the wires at the end right here. Let's go ahead and set this aside. Let's grab your BOSCH relay and let's get to work on it. We're going to take the yellow wire, which is the very top wire. If you take a look at it, it's the very top wire right here. And we are going to fold it in half. We're going to zip tie it out of the way because we are not going to be using it. This black wire is going to go to ground. We're going to take this black wire and we're going to take the black wire from our shock sensor and we are going to tie it together. We're going to take shielding off the shock sensor black wire. We're going to take the shielding off the relay black wire. We're going to twist them together just like this. I'm going to fold it in half to create girth in order to stick it inside this barrel connector for a fork connector. Okay, so let's go ahead and stick it in there. Make sure you put all your shielding all the way inside the connector's insulation so it doesn't expose any wire. See that? Goes all the way through. Let's go ahead and crimp this. I'm going to crimp it one more time. There you go. Now we're going to take the red wire, which is the middle socket. We're going to remove the shielding. We're going to put a red barrel connector in here. Push it all the way inside so it doesn't expose any of the wires. We're going to crimp it. Now we're going to take the red wire from the shock sensor. We're going to take off about 3/4 of the shielding. We're going to twist it so it's not frayed. We're going to fold it in half. And we're going to stick it in this red wire of the relay socket. All the way inside. Now let's go ahead and crimp it. Pretty good. I'm going to add some extra support so it never comes loose. I'm going to do the same for the fork connector. Okay. The shock sensor portion is done. Let's move over to the rest of the wires. We're going to do 2 more wires on the relay. There is the blue wire, which is the bottom socket. This is going to go to your constant power. The white wire on the side, which is going to go to your ignition source. We are going to have to put a fuse on both of these wires. And how do we do that? We're going to take the insulation off of both wires. We are going to put male connectors at each end. And crimp it. Take a male connector at this end. Male connector. I'm going to crimp it. When you're done with this, we are going to put an inline fuse in between here with 2 female connectors in order to hook it up to your fuse. Just like that. Okay? So we are going to cut this. Anywhere you want, just cut it. And we're going to take off 1/2 inch of the shielding. We're going to put on a female connector in order to install it onto our fuse. Take this other end from the relay, take off some shielding, about 1/2 inch, put on a female connector. Now we are going to install our fuse. We're going to take this female, we're going to add it to our fuse right here, connect it to our fuse. The other end, we are going to connect it to our fuse. Now we have an inline fuse. In order for this not to break the blades on the fuse, we are going to give it some additional support by adding electrical tape on the fuse and on the connector itself. Now we are going to do the exact same thing with the ignition wire, the white wire. We are going to cut it in line. We're going to take the shielding off one end. We're going to add a female connector. The other end, we're going to add a female connector. Now we're going to install a fuse. I'm going to grab some 3M tape for extra support. This is about 3 inches, 4 inches. Wrap it around the fuse and the connector to keep it robust. And there we go. We are completely done. Now let's take our setup to the driver's cockpit. Go ahead and bring your tools to the driver's floor, electrical tape, your crimper, your cutter, and your pair of pliers, and bring your T-taps, 3 of them. On the left side of your driver's column, you're going to have a bunch of junction boxes right here. You're going to take a look at this plug up here, and it's going to have a thick green wire. We're going to work on this plug, we're going to work on this plug, and we're going to work on this plug. Okay? This thick green wire right here, this is going to be your power source. If you go down here, this red wire with the blue stripes, inside this plug is going to be your ignition source. Okay? If you take a look up here, this tiny red wire right here, all the way in the corner is going to be your trigger. So let's go ahead and put the T-taps where we're going to put one big one on here. We're going to put one big one on here, and we're going to put a small red one on here. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and start with the power constant wire first. I'm just going to take my cutter and I'm going to carefully expose the wires. I'm just going to cut the shielding without cutting the wire. I'm just going to do this back and forth. I'm going to pull on the shielding in order to expose that copper wire. You see that? How I open up the wire right there? I'm going to get my yellow T-tap. I'm going to take the teeth of it right here and I'm going to clamp onto here just like this. I'm going to take the top jaw, hold on to it. Now I'm going to take my pair of pliers and I'm going to chomp down on it until it clicks. There you go. Locked into place. I'm going down to this plug with the red thick wire with the blue stripes. I'm going to do the exact same thing. This is my ignition source. I am going to take my cutter, not cut the wire, just jiggle it back and forth and loosen up the insulation to expose the copper wire. I'm going to take my yellow T-tap here and I'm going to chomp down on it. There you go. Next, we're going to go up to this plug right here. On the very top socket, you're going to see a very super thin wire, okay? We are going to very carefully expose the wire. After I expose the wire, I'm going to get my smallest T-tap. See the gauge? See the gap in there? That's for small wires. I'm going to put it on this red wire and I am going to chomp down on it with my pair of pliers. There you go. I'm going to go back to my shock sensor. My shock sensor, remember I put the male connector on the combination of the blue and the green wire on my shock sensor. I'm going to take this male connector and I'm going to plug it into this tiny red wire up here. Now I'm going to take the blue wire off my relay, the blue wire that's fused. I am going to plug it into this thick green wire up here. This is going to be my 12-volt constant. I'm going to take my last wire off my relay, which is this white wire, and it's fused. I am going to plug it into this thick red wire with the blue stripes. My very last wire on the relay itself is going to be my black combination wire. It shares the same ground for the relay and it shares the same ground for the shock sensor. I am going to find a ground for this, and the perfect ground would be to go right above the junction box right here. I have two bolts that I'm going to loosen up using a 10mm socket. Doesn't matter which bolt you use, just pick one. They're both ground. I'm just going to loosen it up just enough in order for me to slip this fork in there. Once I slip the fork in there, make sure you hold on to the fork connector while you tighten, because it will try to wedge loose on you. Make sure it's completely tight, that the ground will not come loose. And there you have it. The complete installation of your shock sensor. Right now, your shock sensor is going to function if I touch it. See the red light coming on? Now all I have to do is clean up the wires and attach that shock sensor onto any of my harnesses, and it's going to detect any type of vibrations in the vehicle, and we're going to go ahead and test this. Going to use a bunch of zip ties to clean up the work. I could easily use some 3M electrical tape right now, but I'm just going to be zip tie happy at the moment. There you go. Everything is in a linear fashion. I'm going to most likely take my relay and I'm going to zip tie it to a harness up here somewhere. You got to make sure that, you know, whatever you install here is going to ensure that your panels fit back nicely. Nothing's going to impact the installation of your panels. I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to have to find a really good location for the shock sensor. I want the shock sensor to be able to be accessible because I want to be able to adjust the sensitivity. Remember, turning right is more sensitive, turning left is less sensitive. So I'm going to go ahead and make my adjustments right now so I don't have to lie on my back just to make the adjustments in the dark. There you go. Now I'm going to take a zip tie and I'm going to zip tie this anywhere I want. What I'm going to do is just zip tie this around here and onto a harness somewhere down there. And I'm going to ensure that this adjustment knob right here is accessible, so it's going to be pointing downwards so I can crawl underneath my dash anytime I want to and make any other types of adjustments. Here's the final installation. Here's my shock sensor. I zip tied up against a harness. See, I barely touched it and the red light turns on. Here's my OBD plug right here, and it's to the left of my OBD plug. Okay, look at that. I touch my OBD and the light's turning on. So let's go ahead and test this sucker out, guys. So we are completely done, and now I know what you guys are waiting for. So we're going to go ahead and set the alarm system, our Lexus alarm system, and let me show you how that's determined, whether your alarm system is set or not. If you follow my camera right here, if you look on your center dash right there, you're going to have a red blinking light. Let me zoom in for you guys. Do you see that red blinking light that's on the right side of your navigation screen? If you guys don't see it, it's right here. It's a red blinking light. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and arm the vehicle. I'm going to push lock. Once I push lock, that red blinking light is going to stay solid. Now we are going to wait for that red blinking light to start blinking. That is when your alarm system is set. It's going to take roughly about 30 seconds to set. There you go. Now the light is blinking. It is no longer solid. Let's go ahead and test out the shock sensor. So obviously I'm not going to put the Sawzall straight on my catalytic converter or any of my pipes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to use the soft end of it and I'm going to create a vibration. Imagine if the soft end of it, the flat end of it, sets off the alarm system, what the raggedy end would do. Okay, so let's go ahead and go underneath the car, guys. Come on. Here's my pipe right here. Take my Sawzall. I'm going to start chopping away. Woo-hoo! Oh yeah! So you guys know that my shock sensor is all the way in my driver's cockpit, so I chose the farthest part of the vehicle to test the shock sensor. So let's go ahead and test it out. I'm going to do a light hit. So there you guys have it. I don't know if this is the world's first GX460 anti-theft catalytic converter system. I'm sure there's plenty of other systems out there, but this is surely one of the cheapest and one of the most efficient ones that you could ever own or install, and probably one of the easier ones to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to go ahead and put back all my panels. Of course, all you have to do is just reverse the process of how we took it off. Not that hard to do. And at this point right now, you could go ahead and play around with your shock sensor. You don't need it that sensitive. You can go ahead and tie it to medium if you want to. Do a lot of testing. Go grab your Sawzall and just set your shock sensor on at the lowest setting and see if the Sawzall will set it off. If it sets it off, then keep it on the low setting, because the last thing you want is any type of false impressions that somebody's trying to steal something off your car. You don't want a cat jumping on your car and it's setting it off. So you might want to test the adjustments from this point on, okay? So I'm gonna leave that part up to you guys. My work is done here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace out. GX.